My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to be distinguishing between two constructs, which are words of affirmation, love language, and verbal ability. That's what I'll call it. So if you are somebody who has felt unsatisfied in your marriage with either one of those, then this is the episode for you. Before that, please do subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode, I'm sure was awesome, but I don't remember what it was. Maybe it'll come to me, but we have so many others. Going to be closing in on 200 others at some point here soon. And there's oral sex on women and all sorts of other stuff. And overall, many good things. Oh, it's when the elephant in the room is that you and your partner would never be friends. So it's a really good one. Okay, so some women, especially women, want somebody who's good at talking. Some men want this too. More women than men like this. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. I assume it's because of something with right brain, left brain, women like to talk. I mean, that's like why. But also on a deep evolutionary level, I read that sense of humor is important because it makes you think that the guy's clever and then he would be smart and clever enough to defend you and your family. So verbal agility is just a proxy variable for intelligence, and women care about intelligence a lot in the guy. I see that like a lot more with women than with men. Women saying, oh, he's smarter than me, and that's great. Some men say about his wife, she's smarter than me, and that's great. But they don't usually mean in like every way, including like everything from the mortgage down to how the sink works, down to which route they should take. They don't mean shit like that. They mean like she's smart, like she has a high IQ. That's cool. But like when women mean it, it's like, oh, he knows everything. I have literally, now that I say it like that, not ever heard a guy say that about his wife. She knows everything. And I hear that from women all the time. Sometimes it's like, and that's why he acts like such a douchebag, because he knows everything and he knows that he does. But I've never heard a man say that about a woman. And so maybe I'll do a podcast on that. Maybe not, probably not. And so basically intelligence is super important to women. And a guy could be really good at math and good at building things and a good engineer and brilliant. But if he cannot convey that to his wife, especially if she's a verbal person, then sometimes she feels very alone because she cannot engage in the sorts of conversations she would like. And I talk about this a lot, by the way, in the podcast that I ironically forgot earlier, which is my most recent subscriber episode on when you and your partner don't feel like friends. And that is like a core reason that a lot of women don't feel like friends with their husband is because they don't have good conversations. Now, a lot of men care about this too, if they are the sort that is more creative and more verbal, and then the conversations with their wife feel kind of stilted and boring, then they're upset also. But sometimes people make this huge logical fallacy, right, where they say that their relationship isn't working because a person can't do words of affirmation. Now, that's some bullshit garbage, right? Because the person can learn and frequently does learn and says stuff literally in session, like to the person. They'll be like, well, I love you very much, and I think you're very attractive and very smart, and you're such a good parent, and you're great. I mean, correct me if I am wrong, but let's not gaslight. That is words of affirmation. But what it isn't is verbal agility. It's somebody who is trying to use as few words as they can because they don't love words, like just like how I don't love numbers, and for basic calculations, I get out the calculator, but then I have never made a script for these podcasts. People are not good at everything, If I could just talk out my ass for like hours and hours and hours and hours, that is one skill set, but being able to like subtract is another skill set. And certainly I could I wish I had both, but the point is that these women know that their husband can do the math and the, everything like that they need in the house, and they can hang a picture and it doesn't look all fucked and whatever. But what they can't do is they can't just talk. And so then these guys get gaslighted unintentionally, because the woman is not maliciously doing this. She's trying to frame this in a way that can be fixed because she fears it can't be fixed. And sometimes, again, the guy is the one who's doing this. So if you're the guy that wishes that your wife was better at talking, then you can obviously listen. You can listen to everything. You should, both genders should listen to every episode, because it can always, from what I hear, make you think about things differently and understand your spouse or yourself or what have you. So point being, you are unintentionally gaslighting your spouse if you continue to bullshit them about words of affirmation. Now, sometimes people are really good at talking, but they're just like, they don't give words of affirmation because they're not comfortable with that. Now, in that case, definitely, you're talking about words of affirmation. So that's a guy who's like a lawyer or like a CEO, and he could talk the pants off anybody, and he's a fucking snake charmer with his words, but he just doesn't say anything nice to you. Well, that's a marital issue, and that is definitely a love language issue, and that's probably how he was raised too, or maybe y'all had so many empathic ruptures that he really can't stand you at this point. I don't know. Get into therapy. But if he is good at talking but just not good at saying things to you, that is a words of affirmation and a marital issue, and you are correct. However, do not tell your spouse that they're bad at words of affirmation when what you mean is you're bad at words. If they're bad at words, then that's going to include the subset of affirmations. So, and it's really not something they could super improve on, because they probably have already tried because people are basically math people or words people, And so they've probably tried already to hack the algorithm and say, probably one more compliment to you per day, and it still hasn't worked yet. And that's because that's not what you really want. There's two things that women who complain about not getting words of affirmation want. A, they want to feel more loved by a man who feels emotionally remote and unavailable, the avoidant partner. Go to my podcast on avoidant husbands. Or they're basically saying, you aren't good at words. And I want someone who is good at words, and words is my love language. Like, literally, that's the way to say it, honestly. Words is my love language. But people don't want to say that because a person can't, like what if, subtraction was my husband's love language, I'm not going to just get, super better at math. And, not for nothing. That isn't, okay, so here, that's a very good analogy. So statistics, graduate statistics were very hard for me. And I knew that I had to pass, and I was super anxious about passing. So I studied so much that I got an A+, which is kind of representative of my personality. And, but I probably did 20 hours a week of work for statistics, literally reviewing it at certain points, not all the time. But it was obscene, I studied in groups, I studied alone, I tried to understand it, I tried to, write up flashcards even. I think I don't even know how you could do that for statistics, but and it's the same thing with remember the graphing calculators? I would type in sentences about math when you were allowed to use your graphing calculator. I would literally type in English words about math that I was hoping would help me on the math test. And they did, because the way that I think is in words, not in numbers. So I tried so hard and I succeeded. And you know what? I didn't go into academia because I didn't want to do I didn't want to do STATA. Isn't that what it used to be called, the program? I didn't want to do that shit. I didn't want to do the chi-square shit anymore. That was not my love language for a career. And so some people basically do that with relationships is like they're bad at something and then they get into something that only requires that. So it would be like as though I went into academia. I could get better at it, and I'm sure by this point in my career, I'm sure I would be functional at it, but I would never really be awesome and gifted and interested at the math component of whatever it is that I was studying, you know? And so it's the same thing. If the person isn't good with words and you're like so into words, it's like, all right, they can try as hard as they can, but you know what? It may not feel like natural. And at some point, if you just don't click, you may just not be compatible. Before that, you should try your very hardest, but the other person should also be honest with themselves, because sometimes you just haven't accepted what you need to accept. You know, and so if a woman accepts that it isn't words of affirmation that she wants per se as much as she wants him to be better at words, and you know what, that's not fair to him because he's never has been, never will be, and he can't be, well then sometimes she could just put that to bed. You know, sometimes she could just kind of get over it. And people do get over shit all the time, literally. I mean, that is a lot of what life is. It's seeing things that you think you can't get over, like, for example, aging or your body changing or your children not being exactly what you expected or your career not going exactly like how you expected or whatever, or a parent dying or getting ill or you having medical issues or, God forbid, your child having medical issues. And you can accept so much more than you think you can if you're honest about what you're thinking and if you're honest that you're trying to accept something. Because sometimes you're in this dream world where you're like, think if he just like compliments you more, then he's going to change his whole personality. Well, he won't. So sometimes you just got to see it for what it is. Like people, when they get an ADHD diagnosis for their kids or an autism diagnosis, I see this all the time. They're like, man, he just couldn't pay attention. Well, he's not paying attention now. His room still looks like shit, but I feel better about him. Why? Because I have made peace with that is who he is. He's not trying to obstruct me. He just has ADHD, you know? And that could be so transformative. So if you are somebody who struggles with not getting words of affirmation, take this podcast deeply to heart. Introspect about whether you want the words of affirmation. I'm sure you also do, but you want them said in a way that is different, possibly, than anything your spouse could come up with, unless they are a douchebag, like in that Beautiful versus Hot and Sexy podcast. But I think I talked about that here. I just recorded like 3 in a row, so it's getting a little fuzzy. But but anyway, unless you are, so there's, as I said, there's 2 things. Are you trying to get an avoidant person to be less avoidant and more demonstrative? They can do that. They can grow, change, learn, possibly, not for sure, but that's what therapy is for. But if you're trying to get somebody whose brain works in numbers to work in words, you know, or somebody whose brain works in facts to work in poems, this is not going to happen. You know, it really isn't. And you wouldn't want somebody to like hate your core self and constantly be trying to change core personality level traits about you, right? So, you know, acceptance is really a key part of life. And that is kind of where this needs to go for you. Because if you can see it like, oh my God, my kid has ADHD, they're not trying to make me mad with their room being a shit show, then that's the same principle that we're talking about here. So think about it. And it's something to talk about in individual therapy, not couples therapy. Don't go to couples therapy and be like, I'm really trying to grieve that my partner's personality isn't exactly what I would have wanted, because that's being a dick, right? Or, you know, like saying to like a couples therapist that you're trying to process that you're not attracted to your spouse. It's like the same thing. Don't do that. That's what individual therapy is for, to see what you can accept, what you can't accept, what in you makes you want certain things. Can you live without those things? What are the compromises you can make? All that stuff is the purview of individual work. All right. I hope you guys found this interesting, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.